The old concert hall in Vienna smelled like polished wood and expensive perfume. 17-year-old Isabella sat near the back, her fingers nervously running over the raised dots on her music sheets. She had been doing this since morning, even though she had already memorized every single note. It was just something she did when she was anxious. Her teacher, Mrs. Chen, sat beside her, occasionally patting her hand. The older woman had been more than just a teacher to Isabella. She had been the one who believed in her when everyone else thought teaching piano to a blind girl was a waste of time. The auditorium was filling up fast. Isabella could hear the excited chatter of students from all over Europe. They had come here for one reason. Viktor Volkov was giving a masterclass today. The famous Russian pianist. The man who had played for presidents and royalty. The man whose recordings had sold millions of copies worldwide. Isabella had listened to his music countless times. She admired his technique, the way his fingers could fly across the keys faster than anyone else. But sometimes when she listened to him play, she felt like something was missing. She couldn't quite put her finger on it. The notes were perfect, but they felt cold somehow, like beautiful ice sculptures that you could admire but never touch. She had saved for 2 years to afford the trip to Vienna. Her family wasn't poor, but they weren't rich either. Her father worked at a local grocery store back in their small town in Italy. Her mother cleaned houses. They had given her everything they could, including the old upright piano that sat in their tiny living room. That piano had been her whole world since she was 5 years old. She couldn't remember much from before she lost her sight. There had been an accident, something with a car and a lot of pain, and then darkness, but the piano had saved her. When her fingers touched those keys, she didn't feel blind. She felt free. Mrs. Chen had found her when she was 8, playing a simple melody by ear in the community center. The teacher had been amazed. Within weeks, she had convinced Isabella's parents to let her teach the girl properly. She did it for free at first until Isabella's talent became so obvious that even the skeptical neighbors started to believe. Now, sitting in this grand concert hall, Isabella felt like she was a million miles from home. The seats around her were filled with students from fancy music schools. She could hear them talking about their conservatory training, their private lessons with renowned teachers, their performances at prestigious venues. She had none of that, just Mrs. Chen, her determination, and a piano in a cramped living room. The lights dimmed. Isabella knew this not because she could see them, but because the temperature in the room seemed to change slightly, and the chatter died down to whispers. Then she heard footsteps on the stage. Confident, measured footsteps. Viktor Volkov had arrived. The applause was deafening. Isabella clapped too, her heart beating faster. This was really happening. She was in the same room as one of the greatest pianists in the world. Viktor's voice came through the speakers, deep and accented. He talked about his journey, his training in Moscow, his philosophy on music. Isabella listened carefully to every word. He spoke about discipline, about perfection, about the importance of watching great pianists to learn their technique. Then he sat down at the piano. The room went completely silent. Isabella held her breath. The music that followed was breathtaking. Viktor played Rachmaninoff, one of the most difficult composers. His fingers moved with impossible speed and precision. Every note was crystal clear. The technical mastery was undeniable. The audience around her gasped and whispered in amazement, but Isabella felt that same emptiness again. The notes were perfect, but where was the heart? Where was the soul? Music wasn't just about hitting the right keys at the right time. It was about feeling, about telling a story, about connecting with something deeper than technique. After the performance, another round of thunderous applause filled the hall. Viktor stood and bowed, clearly pleased with himself. Then he spoke again. "Now I will take some questions from you aspiring musicians. Let's see what you want to know." Hands shot up all around the auditorium. Isabella felt Mrs. Chen nudge her gently. "You should ask something," her teacher whispered. Isabella hesitated. She had a question, a real question about his interpretation of Chopin, but she was scared. What if she sounded stupid? What if everyone laughed at her? Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. "You belong here just as much as anyone else." Taking a deep breath, Isabella raised her hand. She kept it up even though Viktor was calling on other students first. She could hear him answering questions about practice routines and performance anxiety. Still, she kept her hand raised. Finally, after what felt like forever, she heard his voice change direction. He must have been looking at her now. Ah, yes. You there in the back section? Isabella's mouth went dry. Mr. Volkov, I wanted to ask about your interpretation of Chopin's Nocturne in C-sharp minor. In the middle section, you take a much faster tempo than most pianists. I was wondering about your reasoning behind that choice. There was a pause. A long pause. Isabella's heart sank. Had she said something wrong? Then Victor spoke, and his tone had changed completely. It wasn't warm anymore. There was something cold in it, something that made her stomach twist. Before I answer that, let me ask you something. Can you see me right now? Isabella felt the blood drain from her face. She knew where this was going. She had dealt with this attitude before, but never in front of hundreds of people. No, sir. I'm blind. Another pause. Then she heard footsteps. He was walking down from the stage, coming closer. The audience was dead silent now. Mrs. Chen's hand tightened around hers. I see. And you presume to question my interpretation. Tell me something, young lady. Have you ever watched a pianist play? Have you seen the way the body moves with the music? Have you observed how the fingers dance across the keys? How the whole performance is a visual art as much as it is an auditory one? Isabella felt like she had been slapped. Around her, she could hear people shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Some were probably agreeing with him. Others might have felt bad for her. But no one said anything. Victor continued, his voice getting louder. Music is not just about what you hear. It's about what you see. It's about the complete experience. You can memorize notes, yes. You can train your fingers to hit the right keys, but you will always be missing half of what makes music truly great. You are experiencing an incomplete art form. The words hung in the air like poison. Isabella felt tears threatening to come, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not now, not in front of all these people. Mrs. Chen started to stand up, ready to defend her student, but Isabella touched her arm gently. Something inside her had shifted. The fear was gone. In its place was something else. Something stronger. She stood up, her voice steady and clear. With respect, Mr. Volkov, I believe music is something you feel with your heart, not something you see with your eyes. Perhaps it is you who has been experiencing only half of what music truly is. Perhaps you've been so focused on the visual performance that you've forgotten to listen to what the music is actually saying. The silence that followed Isabella's words was so thick you could almost touch it. She stood there, her white cane in one hand, her other hand trembling slightly at her side. She couldn't see Victor's face, but she could feel the anger radiating from where he stood. Around her, students were holding their breath. Some probably thought she was incredibly brave. Others probably thought she was crazy for talking back to Victor Volkov. Mrs. Chen had gone completely still beside her, though Isabella could feel her teacher's nervous energy. Victor's footsteps came closer. Isabella could smell his expensive cologne now. He was standing right in front of her, probably trying to intimidate her with his presence. It was working, but she refused to sit down. You have quite the sharp tongue for someone so young, Victor said, his voice dangerously quiet. Tell me your name. Isabella Romano. Well, Isabella Romano, you seem very confident in your opinions. Very confident indeed. He paused, and when he spoke again, there was something cruel in his tone. But confidence without ability is just arrogance. Words are easy. Anyone can talk. The question is, can you actually play? Isabella's heart started racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. She had only come to watch, to learn. She hadn't planned on performing, especially not in front of all these people. I didn't come here to perform. Mr. Volkov, I came to listen and learn from your masterclass. Oh, but now I'm very curious, Victor said, and she could hear the smirk in his voice. You speak so passionately about feeling music with the heart, about how I'm missing something in my playing. So please enlighten us. Show us what true music sounds like. Show us what I'm missing. The challenge hung in the air. Isabella knew exactly what he was doing. He was trying to humiliate her further. He probably expected her to refuse, to back down, and then he could dismiss her as all talk and no substance. Or worse, he expected her to play and fail, proving his point that blind musicians were inferior. Mrs. Chen whispered urgently, Isabella, you don't have to do this. We can leave right now. But Isabella couldn't leave. If she walked away now, she would be confirming everything Victor believed. She would be letting him think that blind people couldn't truly master music. And more than that, she would be betraying every hour she had spent at that old piano in her living room, every sacrifice her parents had made, every dream she had carried in her heart. All right, Isabella said, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'll play for you." A murmur ran through the audience. Some excited, some shocked, some probably already feeling sorry for what was about to happen. Victor made a sweeping gesture toward the stage. "Please be my guest. The piano is all yours." Isabella picked up her cane and began walking toward the stage. Mrs. Chen quickly moved beside her, guiding her gently. The walk felt endless. She could hear whispers all around her. She caught fragments of conversations. "Poor girl. She's going to embarrass herself. This is painful to watch. Someone should stop this," but some voices were different. "I hope she proves him wrong. Come on. You can do it." Those voices gave her strength. She reached the steps to the stage and Mrs. Chen helped her up. The piano was a Steinway, she could tell from the first touch. A beautiful instrument, much better than anything she had ever played before. She sat down on the bench, adjusting her position. The piano was at a different height than she was used to. The bench felt strange. Everything about this moment felt wrong, but she had to push through. Victor's voice came from somewhere to her right. "Take your time. We're all waiting." The sarcasm in his tone was obvious. He was enjoying this. He probably thought he had already won. Isabella closed her eyes. Not that it made any difference to what she could see, but it helped her focus. She thought about her grandmother who had passed away 2 years ago. Her grandmother used to sit next to her while she practiced, listening for hours without complaint. She would always say, "Bella, when you play, don't think about the people watching. Play for the music itself. Play for the beauty of it." Isabella took a deep breath and let her fingers rest on the keys. What should she play? It had to be something meaningful. Something that would prove her point. Something that would show Victor and everyone in this room that music was so much more than visual performance. Then it came to her. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata. All 3 movements. Not just the famous first movement that everyone knew, but the complete piece, including the impossibly difficult third movement that made even professional pianists nervous. It was ambitious. Maybe too ambitious. But if she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. She positioned her hands and began. The first notes of the Adagio sostenuto floated into the air, soft, melancholic, beautiful. The famous melody that had touched hearts for over 200 years. But Isabella didn't play it like a showpiece. She played it like a confession. Every note carried weight. Every phrase told a story. The story of darkness and light, of loneliness and hope, of struggling and surviving. She poured everything into those keys. All the times she had been told she couldn't do something because she was blind. All the doors that had been closed in her face. All the people who had underestimated her. But also all the love she had received. Her parents working extra hours to afford her lessons. Mrs. Chen believing in her when no one else did. Her grandmother's gentle encouragement. The first movement ended and she moved seamlessly into the second. The allegretto was shorter, lighter, but she played it with such grace that it felt like a brief moment of peace in the middle of a storm. Then came the third movement, the presto agitato. This was where most pianists showed off their technical skill. The rapid arpeggios, the thundering octaves, the breakneck speed required to play it properly. Isabella's fingers exploded across the keyboard. Her hands moved with a speed and precision that shocked everyone in the room. But it wasn't just technical mastery. It was passion. It was fury. It was every emotion she had bottled up inside her, finally being released. The music wasn't just beautiful. It was alive. It breathed and raged and wept and celebrated. Her fingers never missed a note, never hesitated, never faltered. The piano sang under her hands like it had never sung before. She could feel it happening. That magical moment when the player and the instrument become one. When the music stops being something you create and starts being something that flows through you. She wasn't playing the piano anymore. She was the music itself. The final crashing chords rang out, echoing through the concert hall. Isabella's hands stayed on the keys, her chest heaving from the exertion. Sweat had formed on her forehead. Her fingers were trembling. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Not a single person moved. Not a single person breathed. Then, from somewhere in the back of the auditorium, a single person started clapping. Then another. Then another. Then the entire room erupted into applause. Students jumped to their feet. Some were crying. Others were shouting. The sound was deafening. Isabella sat there stunned. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected any of this. Mrs. Chen rushed onto the stage and threw her arms around her student, tears streaming down her face. "You did it, Bella, you did it." But Isabella was thinking about only one person, Victor. What was he doing? What was he thinking? She turned her head toward where she remembered him standing, trying to hear something, anything that would tell her his reaction. The applause continued, wave after wave of it, washing over her like a storm. The applause seemed to go on forever. Isabella sat at the piano, trying to process what had just happened. Her hands were still shaking. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst out of her chest. Mrs. Chen was hugging her tightly, whispering words of pride and joy that Isabella could barely hear over the noise. Slowly, the applause began to fade. People were sitting back down, but the energy in the room had completely changed. The air felt different now, charged with something Isabella couldn't quite name. Then she heard footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps crossing the stage. Victor was walking toward her. The room went silent again, everyone waiting to see what would happen next. Isabella stood up, straightening her shoulders. Whatever he was going to say, she would face it standing. Mrs. Chen moved slightly behind her, protective but letting Isabella have this moment. Victor stopped a few feet away from her. Isabella could hear his breathing. For a long moment he said nothing. The silence stretched out, becoming uncomfortable. What was he thinking? Was he angry? Embarrassed? Ready to dismiss her performance with some cruel comment? "Miss Romano," Victor finally said, and his voice sounded strange. Different from before. Quieter. "How long have you been playing piano?" Isabella wasn't sure what she expected him to say, but it wasn't that. "Since I was 5 years old." 12 years. "And who taught you?" "My teacher, Mrs. Chen. She's been with me since I was 8. Another pause. Then Victor spoke again, and this time there was something in his voice that Isabella had never heard from him before. Something that almost sounded like emotion. "I need to tell you something. I need to tell everyone here something." He turned slightly, addressing the entire auditorium now. "I have been playing piano for 43 years. I started when I was 4 years old in Moscow. I trained at the most prestigious conservatories. I have won every major competition. I have performed in every great concert hall in the world. I have played for queens and presidents and millions of people." Isabella had no idea where this was going. Beside her, Mrs. Chen had gone very still. Victor continued. "And in all those years, in all those performances, in all those hours of practice and teaching and performing, I thought I understood music. I thought I had mastered it. I thought I knew what it meant to truly play the piano." He took a step closer to Isabella. "But I was wrong. What you just did, what you just played, that wasn't just music. That was something else entirely. That was pure emotion transformed into sound. That was a human soul speaking through an instrument. And I have never in my entire career heard anything like it." Isabella felt tears prickling at her eyes. She couldn't tell if this was real or if she was dreaming. Was Victor Volkov, the man who had mocked her just minutes ago, actually praising her? "When I play," Victor said, his voice thick with emotion, "I think about technique. I think about perfection. I think about how I look, how the performance appears to the audience. I have spent so much time worrying about the visual aspect of music that I forgot why I started playing in the first place. I forgot about the feeling, the connection, the truth." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice cracked slightly. "You were right, Miss Romano. I have been experiencing only half of what music truly is, maybe less than half. And you, who cannot see the keys or watch your hands or observe other pianists, you understand music better than I ever have." The auditorium was dead silent. Students were staring at the stage, hardly believing what they were hearing. Victor Volkov, known for his pride and his sharp criticism, was admitting he was wrong. Publicly, in front of hundreds of people. Isabella didn't know what to say. Part of her felt vindicated. Part of her felt sorry for him. Part of her just felt exhausted. "I owe you an apology," Victor said. "A profound apology. What I said to you earlier was cruel and ignorant and completely wrong. I judged you based on your disability instead of your ability. I let my own prejudice blind me to your talent. And I am deeply, truly sorry." Isabella felt Mrs. Chen's hand squeeze her shoulder. She took a deep breath. "Thank you for saying that, Mr. Volkov. It means a lot." "It's not enough," Victor said quickly. "Words are not enough. I need to do something more." He seemed to be thinking, pacing slightly. Then he stopped. Miss Romano, are you currently enrolled in any music school? No, sir. We couldn't afford it. Mrs. Chen has been teaching me privately. Then I would like to offer you a full scholarship to study here at the Vienna Conservatory, under my personal instruction. All expenses paid, including housing and living costs, if you'll accept. The gasp that went through the audience was audible. Isabella felt her knees go weak. A full scholarship? To study in Vienna? With Victor Volkov? This couldn't be real. Things like this didn't happen to girls from small Italian towns. Mrs. Chen made a small sound beside her, something between a laugh and a sob. Isabella, this is incredible. But Isabella's mind was racing. Vienna was far from home. Her parents would be alone. Her father with his grocery store job. Her mother with her house cleaning. They had sacrificed so much for her already. Could she really leave them? And yet this was everything she had ever dreamed of. A real education, training with one of the world's best pianists, the chance to actually make a career out of music instead of just playing in her living room. I need to think about it, Isabella said slowly. I need to talk to my family. Of course, Victor said. Take all the time you need. But please consider it seriously. You have a gift, Miss Romano, a rare, precious gift. It would be a crime against music itself to not nurture it properly. Someone in the audience started clapping again, and soon the whole room joined in. But this time the applause felt different. It wasn't just appreciation for a performance. It was celebration of something bigger, a moment of transformation, of truth. As the applause died down, students began to approach Isabella. They wanted to talk to her, to congratulate her, to ask her questions. Some of them apologized for their initial reactions. Others just wanted to shake her hand. One young woman, who introduced herself as Katrina, spoke with tears in her voice. My little brother is blind. He loves music, but our parents tell him it's not practical, that he should focus on something else. I'm going to show him what you did today. I'm going to tell him that anything is possible. Those words hit Isabella harder than anything else that had happened. She hadn't just played for herself today. She had played for everyone who had ever been told they couldn't do something. Everyone who had been limited by other people's narrow thinking. Victor stayed on the stage, watching the crowd gather around Isabella. At one point, Mrs. Chen approached him. Isabella couldn't hear their conversation, but she could sense the tone. Mrs. Chen was probably giving him a piece of her mind, defending her student one more time even though the battle was already won. Later, when things finally calmed down, Victor approached Isabella one more time. Miss Romano, regardless of what you decide about the scholarship, I want to ask you one more thing. Yes? Would you allow me to record your performance? The Moonlight Sonata you just played. I have connections with recording studios and music labels. What you played today, the world should hear it. Isabella felt overwhelmed. Everything was happening so fast. Just this morning, she had been a nobody from a small town. Now she was being offered scholarships and recording contracts. I need time, she said again. This is all so much. I understand. But Isabella, please believe me when I say this. You didn't just play beautifully today. You changed something in me. You reminded me why music matters. And I think you could do the same for millions of other people. That night, back in their small hotel room, Isabella and Mrs. Chen talked for hours. They called Isabella's parents in Italy. Her mother cried. Her father tried to sound strong, but his voice kept breaking. They both told her the same thing. Follow her dreams. They would be fine. They would always be fine as long as she was happy. Isabella didn't sleep much that night. She lay in the unfamiliar hotel bed, listening to Mrs. Chen's soft breathing from the other bed, and tried to make sense of everything that had happened. Just 12 hours ago, she had been sitting in that auditorium, nervous and scared. Now her entire life had changed. Her phone kept buzzing. Apparently someone had recorded her performance and posted it online. Mrs. Chen had shown her the video before bed, reading out the comments that were flooding in. Thousands of them. Then tens of thousands. People from all over the world were watching her play, listening to her story and sharing it with others. The comments Mrs. Chen read to her were overwhelming. People saying they had tears in their eyes. Parents of disabled children thanking her for giving them hope. Musicians admitting that they had never thought about music the way she played it. Even other blind people reaching out telling her she was an inspiration. But Isabella didn't feel like an inspiration. She felt like a confused 17-year-old girl who had just been thrown into the deep end of a pool and was trying not to drown. The next morning, Victor had arranged to meet them for breakfast at a cafe near the conservatory. Isabella was nervous. Yesterday's emotion had been raw and real, but would he still feel the same way today? Or would he have second thoughts about offering her that scholarship? When they arrived, Victor was already there. Isabella could smell coffee and fresh pastries. He stood up as they approached, pulling out a chair for her. "Good morning, Miss Romano, Mrs. Chen. I hope you both slept well." "Not really," Isabella admitted. She had decided she would be honest with him. No point in pretending otherwise. Victor laughed, but it was a gentle sound. "I didn't sleep much either. I've been thinking about yesterday. About everything that happened." Isabella's heart sank. Here it comes, she thought. He's going to take back the offer. But Victor surprised her. "I've been thinking about how I teach, about my whole approach to music, and I realized that I've been doing it wrong for years, maybe decades. I've been training students to be technically perfect, but I haven't been teaching them to feel the music, to really connect with it." He paused, and Isabella heard him sip his coffee. "Your performance yesterday didn't just humble me. It woke me up, and I want to be better, not just as a pianist, but as a teacher." Mrs. Chen spoke up for the first time. "Mr. Volkov, I appreciate your apology yesterday, but I need to know something before Isabella makes any decision. If she comes to study with you, will you truly respect her? Will you accommodate her needs? Or will you expect her to struggle through a system designed for sighted students?" Isabella felt a rush of gratitude for her teacher. Mrs. Chen was always looking out for her, always fighting battles that Isabella sometimes didn't even know needed to be fought. "That's a fair question," Victor said, "and I'll be honest. I don't know all the answers yet. I've never taught a blind student before, but I'm willing to learn. I'll work with you, Mrs. Chen, to understand what Isabella needs. We'll modify the teaching methods. We'll make sure she has access to Braille music sheets, to whatever technology helps her, whatever it takes." He leaned forward and his voice became more intense. "But more than that, I think Isabella can teach me as much as I can teach her. Maybe more. I want to learn from her approach to music, her way of feeling it, of understanding it without relying on sight." Isabella had been quiet, listening to them talk about her. Now she spoke up. "Can I ask you something, Mr. Volkov?" "Of course. And please call me Victor. Yesterday when you mocked me, were you always that cruel to students? Or was it just because I'm blind?" The question hung in the air. Mrs. Chen shifted uncomfortably, probably worried that Isabella was being too direct. But Isabella needed to know. She needed to understand who this man really was. Victor was quiet for a long moment. "That's a hard question to answer. The truth is, I've always been demanding. Sometimes harsh. I've made students cry. I've crushed their confidence when I thought they weren't good enough. I told myself it was for their own good, that great artists need thick skin." He sighed. "But yesterday, yes, I was worse than usual. Your blindness made me dismissive before you even spoke. I assumed you couldn't possibly be as good as the other students. And when you challenged me, when you questioned my interpretation, my ego couldn't handle it. So I lashed out in the cruelest way I could think of." Isabella appreciated his honesty, even though it hurt to hear. "And now I'm ashamed. And I'm trying to be better. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I'm still going to be demanding, still going to push my students hard. But I'll never again dismiss someone because of a disability. And I'll try to remember that breaking someone's spirit isn't the same as building their character." After breakfast, Victor took them on a tour of the conservatory. He described everything to Isabella in detail. The practice rooms with their perfect acoustics, the concert hall where students performed, the library filled with thousands of musical scores, many of which could be provided in Braille or audio format. They met some of the other faculty members. Victor introduced Isabella with pride in his voice, telling everyone about her performance the day before. Some of the teachers had already seen the video online. One of them, an elderly woman named Professor Hoffman, took Isabella's hands in hers. "My dear, I've been teaching here for 40 years. I've heard thousands of students play. But what you did yesterday was special. Truly special." As they walked through the halls, Isabella heard other students practicing. She could hear scales and arpeggios, etudes and sonatas. Some were good. Some were struggling. But she could hear something else too, a focus on perfection rather than expression. Exactly what Victor had been talking about. In the afternoon, a recording studio representative came to meet them. Victor had been serious about recording her performance. They wanted to release it as a single, with the video attached. They talked about marketing plans and release strategies using words Isabella barely understood. "Wait," Isabella said, interrupting their excited chatter. "I don't understand. Why would people want to buy a recording of me? I'm nobody. I'm just a student." The representative, a woman named Claudia, laughed warmly. "Isabella, you're not nobody. Your video already has over 1 million views. People are calling you the girl who put Victor Volkov in his place, the blind pianist who played from the heart. You've become a sensation overnight. 1 million views." Isabella couldn't even imagine that many people. Her whole town probably had fewer than 10,000 people. And 1 million strangers had watched her play? "This is too much," Isabella whispered to Mrs. Chen. "I don't know if I can handle all of this." Mrs. Chen squeezed her hand. "You don't have to decide everything right now. Take your time." But Victor shook his head gently. "Actually, there is some urgency. The video's going viral. Media outlets are trying to find you. They want interviews. They want to know your story. If we don't get ahead of this, if we don't control the narrative, it could become overwhelming." He was right. Even as they sat there, Isabella's phone kept buzzing with notifications. Friend requests on social media, messages from strangers, even a few journalists who had somehow gotten her number. That evening, they held a small meeting in Victor's office. Present were Victor, Isabella, Mrs. Chen, Claudia from the recording studio, and a publicist named Thomas who specialized in managing young artists. Thomas laid out a plan. They would do one major interview, telling Isabella's story properly. They would release the recording professionally, with all the proper permissions and contracts. They would set up social media accounts managed by professionals so Isabella wouldn't be overwhelmed by direct contact. And then, Thomas said, "We let the music speak for itself. We don't turn you into a circus act. We don't parade you around as the blind pianist. We present you as what you are, a talented musician who happens to be blind." Isabella liked that. She didn't want to be famous because of her disability. She wanted to be known for her music. "There's one more thing," Victor said. "I've been contacted by the organizers of the International Piano Competition in Paris. It's in 3 months. They want to offer you a special invitation to compete." 3 months? Isabella's voice rose. "That's not enough time to prepare. You just played one of the most difficult pieces in the piano repertoire from memory, with no preparation, in front of a hostile audience," Victor pointed out. "I think you're more ready than you realize," Mrs. Chen spoke up. "What do you think, Isabella? What do you want to do?" Isabella sat there surrounded by all these people planning her future and realized something. For the first time in her life, she actually had choices, real choices. Not just dreams, but possibilities. 3 months passed faster than Isabella ever thought possible. She had accepted Victor's scholarship and moved to Vienna. The decision had been painful. Leaving her parents had torn at her heart. Her mother had cried at the train station, holding her tight and making her promise to call every single day. Her father had tried to be strong, but Isabella heard his voice crack when he whispered, "Make us proud, Bella." Mrs. Chen had stayed with her for the first 2 weeks, helping her settle in, making sure she knew how to navigate the conservatory and the city. But eventually her teacher had to return to Italy. The goodbye had been one of the hardest moments of Isabella's life. "You don't need me anymore," Mrs. Chen had said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're ready to fly on your own." "I'll always need you," Isabella had replied. "You're not just my teacher. You're family." Now, Isabella stood backstage at the Grand Theatre in Paris, waiting for her turn to perform at the International Piano Competition. She could hear the current contestant playing, a young man from South Korea whose technique was flawless. Every note was perfect, every rhythm precise. But Isabella noticed something. The audience was quiet, polite. There was no passion in their response. Victor stood beside her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. Their relationship had transformed completely over the past 3 months. He had been patient, supportive, and had learned as much from her as she had learned from him. He had started encouraging all his students to play with more emotion, to connect with the music rather than just executing it perfectly. "Are you nervous?" Victor asked softly. "Terrified," Isabella admitted. "What if I forget the music? What if my fingers freeze?" "Then you'll be human," Victor said. "Isabella, you've already won. Not the competition, maybe, but something more important. You've reminded people what music is supposed to be. Whatever happens today, you've already changed lives, the Korean pianist finished. Polite applause followed. Then the announcer's voice came through the speakers. Next we have Isabella Romano from Italy, studying at the Vienna Conservatory under the tutelage of Victor Volkov. Isabella heard whispers ripple through the audience. They knew who she was. The video of her performance had been viewed over 20 million times now. Some people were here specifically to see if she was really as good as the video suggested, or if it had been a one-time lucky moment. Victor walked her to the stage entrance. Remember, you're not playing for them. You're playing for yourself, for the music, for everyone who ever told you that you couldn't. Isabella nodded and made her way onto the stage. The walk to the piano felt familiar now. She had practiced it dozens of times during rehearsals. She reached the grand piano, ran her fingers along its edge, and sat down. The audience was completely silent, waiting, judging. Isabella had chosen to play Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, a piece that was both technically demanding and emotionally powerful. She would be playing with an orchestra, which added another layer of complexity. She couldn't see the conductor's movements. She would have to rely entirely on her hearing and her internal sense of timing. The conductor, Maestro Laurent, had worked with her extensively during preparation. He had been skeptical at first, worried about how she would follow his lead. But after their first rehearsal together, he had become her biggest supporter. She raised her hands to the keyboard. The audience held its breath. Then the orchestra began the opening, those famous chords that had introduced one of the most beloved concertos ever written. Isabella waited for her entrance. 4 measures, 3, 2, 1. Her fingers came down on the keys and she poured her entire soul into the music. This wasn't just a performance. This was her story, the struggle of her childhood after losing her sight, the loneliness of being different, the joy of discovering music, the pain of being mocked and dismissed, the triumph of proving everyone wrong. Every phrase she played carried meaning. Every crescendo was a challenge overcome. Every soft passage was a moment of vulnerability. She wasn't just playing notes on a page. She was sharing her heart with 3,000 strangers. The second movement began. That achingly beautiful melody that had made millions of people cry. Isabella played it with such tenderness that people in the audience actually started weeping. She could hear someone sobbing quietly in the front rows. She could feel the collective emotion of everyone present. Then came the third movement, the triumphant finale. Isabella's fingers flew across the keys with impossible speed and precision. The orchestra swelled behind her. Maestro Laurent was conducting with more passion than he had shown in years, caught up in the emotion of the performance. As they built toward the final climax, Isabella felt something she had never felt before. Complete and total freedom. She wasn't thinking about technique or timing or what anyone thought. She was simply existing in the music, letting it flow through her like she was a channel for something greater than herself. The final chords crashed out, huge and powerful and definitive. The orchestra held the last note, then silence. For 3 full seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed, then the audience exploded. People jumped to their feet. The applause was deafening, thunderous, unlike anything the competition had ever heard. People were shouting, crying, hugging strangers. The other competitors backstage were on their feet too, applauding along with everyone else. Isabella sat at the piano, overwhelmed. She had done it. She had really done it. Maestro Laurent came over and hugged her, tears streaming down his face. In 40 years of conducting, I have never experienced anything like that. Thank you. The judges were in chaos. They were supposed to remain impartial, but several of them were openly crying. The scoring rules seemed irrelevant now. How do you score something that transcends technical evaluation? When the results were announced an hour later, no one was surprised. Isabella had won first place by unanimous decision. But more than that, she had been awarded a special recognition that the competition had never given before, for reminding the world of the true purpose of music. The prize came with a recording contract, a tour of major concert halls across Europe, and scholarship money that would support her studies for years. But Isabella barely heard any of that. She was thinking about her parents back home, probably huddled around their old radio listening to the broadcast. She was thinking about Mrs. Chen, who had believed in her from the very beginning. She was thinking about her grandmother, who had always told her that music was a gift meant to be shared. Victor found her in the green room after the ceremony. "You know what the best part of all this is?" he asked. "What?" "I was in the audience during your performance. I sat there and I listened. Really listened. And for the first time in decades, I cried during a piano performance. You didn't just win a competition today, Isabella. You completed my transformation. You taught me to hear music the way you do, with the heart." Later that evening, Isabella did interviews with journalists from around the world. They asked her about her disability, about her training, about her future plans. But one reporter asked a different question. "Isabella, Viktor Volkov once mocked you and said you were experiencing an incomplete art form. How do you feel about that now?" Isabella thought carefully before answering. "I don't hold any anger toward Victor. What he did that day, as painful as it was, gave me the push I needed. He challenged me to prove myself, and in doing so, he also challenged himself to grow. We both learned something important. Music isn't about what you can see or what you can't see. It's about what you can feel and what you can share." And in the end, Victor didn't just apologize. He changed. He became a better teacher and a better person. That's worth more than any competition prize. The video of that response went viral too. People shared it with comments about forgiveness, growth, and second chances. A year later, Isabella opened her own music school back in her hometown in Italy. She called it Casa della Musica, the House of Music. The school was specifically designed for children with disabilities, though it welcomed everyone. She wanted to make sure that no child with a dream would ever be told that their limitations defined their possibilities. Victor came to the opening ceremony. He donated a beautiful grand piano and agreed to teach master classes at the school twice a year. When he spoke at the ceremony, he told the gathered crowd, "I came here as a teacher, but I'm really a student. Isabella taught me the most important lesson of my career, that music lives not in our hands or our eyes, but in our hearts." Isabella still performed regularly. She played in concert halls across the world, but her favorite performances were the small ones at her school, playing for children who had been told they couldn't, showing them that they absolutely could. Every time she sat at a piano, she thought about that day in Vienna, the day she was mocked, the day she was challenged, the day everything changed. And she smiled because that terrible moment had led to all of this, to proving that limitations are often just illusions created by limited thinking. Her grandmother had been right all along. Music was meant to be shared, and Isabella had shared it with the whole world.